I nearly said good morning. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. We are back. We have a double today. Due to technical issues this morning, we were unable to connect with Nancy Myer. However, we have Nancy in the naughty room. She's ready to go. We'd like to welcome all our viewers coming online. We are live on YouTube. I know it's a different time today. However, you can watch the replay on YouTube or live on our wall. So I'm just going to introduce Nancy. This week's guest is the amazing Nancy Myer. She's an author, psychic consultant. Nancy has worked on thousands of criminal cases, and she has appeared on the national broadcast series Unsolved Mysteries. I think it's Geraldo, Psychic Detective, Psychic Investigators, and on many local and national radio and television interviews. I call Nancy the trailblazer. To me, she's an icon, and it's an honor and a privilege to have her on the show this afternoon. So, Chris, could you please let Nancy out of the naughty room?
Hi. I'm not sure you should let me out of the naughty room. I think I belong in there.
Well, we'll see how it goes. We can always pop you back.
Yeah, you can pop me right back in there.
We'll pop you back in the naughty room. Thank you again for coming on the show.
No problem. I mean, thank you for inviting me.
And it's morning where you are, isn't it, Nancy? Morning time where you are. It's morning time in the world where you are.
It's morning, yes. Yeah. So we definitely are not in similar time zones. You know, it's 11:18 my time.
So actually, you're time traveling now, Nancy. I love that. That's even better.
I like that. I've always wanted to do time travel. That would be cool. I was thinking one time, if I could teleport, I could just show up in your living room and we could do the interview that way. That would be fun.
That would be wicked. And you can fix all my appliances with your energy. Thank you very much. Work on it, Nancy. But really,
I don't dare.
I don't
dare. I don't want to break your washing machine.
No, you would break it. I know you break anything anything electrical. But in fact, you can go to Chris's house and stay away from me, Nancy. Now, we're gonna go with this, okay? Now you're time traveling. You're in the UK. It's nearly 4:20 in the afternoon. You really are a time traveler. I'm just going to ask you the question.
It's tea time.
Tea time.
Tea time. Yeah.
Yes, it's tea time. Not for us though. However. Nancy Myer, when did you get involved in psychic detection? When did it start?
I gave a seminar at a college, and one of the people attending was the new head of the Delaware State Police. I didn't even know till I arrived for the speech that they had invited police officers. I was expecting to work with civilians. And he pulled a trick on me by giving his ring to someone else, but it didn't fool me. When I got the ring, I gave a glare to the guy that gave it to me, and then I walked right across the room and stood directly in front of Colonel Irvin B. Smith. And I kind of started divulging stuff he didn't want me to divulge about the fact that he had just gotten a new job, which wasn't yet announced publicly. And he tried to stop me from talking, and just to needle him a little bit, to pay him back for trying to trick me, I started saying something else, and he shot out of his seat. He said, "Please don't say anything." But we ended up, he called me once each morning for 9 solid weeks. And he called it police harassment. He said, "I really want to try this. I think it will work well. I know you're the right person. Please agree." So I finally said, "You're not going to stop bothering me until I do this, right?" And he said, "That's right." So I went out, and 2 detectives showed up at my door. The first one says, "I don't believe in this crap. I don't believe a word of it. Colonel Smith ordered me to be here, and I don't want to be here." And the other young man said, "I think it's cool. I've been reading up on it. I think you can do it. I can't wait to try it." These are the first 2 detectives I worked with. We went out, and within 10 minutes of working on the first case, they knew I was getting factual information, and it just stunned Carl. He was the one that didn't believe in it. And I helped them solve a very dangerous case, which I can't identify publicly because even at this date, the people responsible for that case could come after me. So I don't. But that was our first case. And Detective Sergeant Williams said to me, "You're in trouble now." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because Colonel Smith is going to find out you are as good as he thought you are, and you're going to get more cases." And I'm like, "Oh my God, that's not good." That's how I got into it. That was 46 years ago.
46 years. Oh my goodness.
And I'm so
you're still working, Nancy. Yes, I know. Yes. I know you are.
Yeah,
I know.
I'm still at it.
How did you get into, because obviously you're a medium, a psychic, and all the rest, you've got that gift. And once this first case came about and you realized, yes, this works, we can work together, I'm just another tool. When did you really how did you get into the detection work or learn about the detection work? How did that come in? Because obviously you were not a police officer, and it was all a new arena for you.
I was just a civilian and knew nothing about police work at all. When Colonel Smith threw me to the wolves, so to speak, that's how it started. He assigned me to work with a special unit that Detective Sergeant Williams was in charge of. And what we did, Carl and I, he taught me the detection end of it. He trained me as to our limitations, what we needed, how he needed help, and working together with his squad is how I started in police work. And the results were rather startling to me. I really didn't think it would be detailed enough, but it was. Then I found out these detectives are really gossipy guys. Every time they went to a convention or a conference, they told everybody about me. So I would start getting requests from a state I'd never even heard about. And I even got called a couple times by the Mounties in Canada, and it just kind of grew like topsy. It was kind of crazy because I had 2 little boys, one of whom my oldest son, Blake, who unfortunately died probably of COVID last year, was the most mischievous, naughty child I have ever known. He was brilliant, and his level of mischief was he's legendary among his cousins for all the mischief that he got into. And it never stopped right up to the time he died. He was still into mischief. So I was raising him and his younger brother, and then this career just collided with me. It was a struggle trying to balance all of that and to deal with the awfulness humanity is capable of. I mean, I grew up all over the world because my dad was in the Foreign Service, but I had never seen such awfulness. And to have to be a very empathic, sensitive person, and I basically have to relive the crime. It's not pleasant, but it does work.
I think many mediums are going into this type of field. I don't think they can contemplate or understand how horrific it can be, the effect upon the psychic medium, because, as I said, in your case, you do relive it. You do relive it. It's just so real. Was there a point at the very beginning that did you ever think, I can't do this. I can't. Or did you just find you naturally just flowed into it? Okay, I can manage the mischievous child and all the rest. Or was there a point that you thought, no, if there was, what changed? What changed?
Well, Colonel Smith started referring to me as the reluctant psychic because I really didn't want to do it. And he said, but you are so good at it, and we can put killers in jail. And the first time they brought me a case involving a child that had been murdered, and I helped them find the child's body. And it was just it was terrible. I had nightmares about it for weeks. And I talked to Smitty about it, and he was really good because he said, we all go through this. When we work on our first homicide cases as police officers who are trained, we have the same problems that you're having. We have to learn how to get the emotional distance to do the work without it destroying us. And I gradually figured out a way to do that. They did have to quit hauling me to crime scenes because that was overwhelming and I nearly threw up. They claim I did throw up. I maintain I never did actually throw up, but they say I did. But it's not pleasant. And I've talked with young psychics who want to become psychic detectives, and I've explained to them, you better brace yourself. This is not easy work. It's extremely painful and hard on a psychic to do. And some of them listen and some of them don't. And it's interesting because there's a huge difference in my field between the frauds that are out there and the real thing. And unfortunately, because there still is no way to quantifiably, with any mechanical device, determine who's real and who's not, you just have to put them out there and try it and see. There's still a lot of frauds, and that's very frustrating to me after all the years I've worked to see that hasn't gotten any better either. In amongst them are these people who have talent on a huge level. Their work is phenomenal, and they should be in it if they can tolerate it. But it isn't just, are you good at the job? Are you good at surviving the job? Is the second question that has to be asked. And how do you figure out how to survive it? Smitty was right. You have to learn to get an emotional distance so that you can focus on the case and working the stuff that needs to be worked to solve the case and put a murderer behind bars without getting so overwhelmed emotionally yourself. That's a battle. That's going to be there always. It gets better in that I've learned how to distance myself, but the battle is constant. And the worst cases are the ones involving children. Those are the hardest ones to deal with.
That must, yeah, I can imagine that.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask on the back of that. So at the beginning, we have the story set. As you went along, did you then find that these I don't believe police officers, yeah, no, don't believe in this, I don't believe, and once it was going to this state, to that state, did you find an interest was building up for the departments themselves that, well, maybe our police officers need a bit of training here, because obviously it's gut. A lot of them have the gut feeling, they've got it, and they won't admit
they
it.
do.
Did you
They
find
won't admit
change?
it.
No. Did you find that shift that started to happen? Did you find that?
Not for quite a while. I think now, because I have been more visible, they listen, but there's still these tough nuts that this is not real. This is a waste of my time. I don't want to be here, but I've learned how to get past that quickly by starting to give them details that aren't known publicly that I could not possibly have known. Because with the internet and everything, that complicates things. And I keep telling them, I don't have enough hours in the day to research stuff on the internet. I'm too busy. But they think you're looking everything up. And but once they begin to realize that I'm giving them their case as if I've been working on it from the beginning, they are so focused on solving cases that they forget their biases and they start working the case. And that's what makes the difference. That has changed. Now, I don't think I go through as much bull, pardon the expression, as I did at first because I am well known. But cops are show me I'm from Missouri kind of people. So they're going to run a test in there somewhere. They're going to try to mislead me. They're going to try to hand me, well, they'll do a photo lineup that includes a bunch of their detectives in the photo lineup. And I will play that game right back at them and say, this guy really needs some help. And I'll point right at one of their detectives. And then I'll tell them, what he's having trouble with and how to fix it. Yeah. And then they'll start laughing because he's in the other room watching through one of those two-way mirrors. And it's like, and then I'll say, would you like me to go on? And they'll say, no, he comes running back in the room. No, that's enough. So they know that I can tell the difference in their photos of who is one of them and who is not. So the baloney tends to start going away faster when I do that.
So, Nancy, can I just ask you, what's involved with being a psychic detective? Well, for someone who, obviously, I know it's about solving different crimes and things like that. But for someone who doesn't know anything about it, what would be involved without opening obviously cases up? But what would be involved? What process do you go through yourself as a psychic medium to solve that case?
What I do now is I have them send me copies so they don't get lost somewhere, or email me copies of some of the crime scene photos. And I work most of my cases now from my own home. That has been going on for years, long before COVID. But of course, now that we've got that to deal with, my safety is an issue. So I work from the photos, and they'll send me a stack sometimes that's like this big of photos. And I'll sort through them until I find the ones that give me the most information, and then I'll set those aside. I'm not really looking at the photos. I'm scanning them for energy and information. And the stack that I set aside is the stack that gives me the most information. I then start working from that. And I do most of the work on the phone from my own office or my living room, depending on my mood. We're in my living room right now.
You're in the living room. She's in a good mood today. Yes. I've got to. That was a great question, Chris. That was a great question. I've got to ask you. Go on. No, go on, Nancy. It's okay.
Well, it's kind of like people don't realize that when I'm working a criminal case, I'm just seeing photographs. That's it. And from the photograph, I give them ways to solve the case that work. So it's kind of like very different from how I first worked when they would drive me to a crime scene and I'd nearly get sick. Then we'd have to put me back in the car and get me away from the overwhelming stuff. Now, once I figured I could do it with photos, I'm like, that gives me the distance I need not to get sick, guys. So let's stick with the photos.
I hear you on that one. I've got to ask, and I've always wanted to ask you this for years. When was, or which show was your first show you went on? And how did you feel when it was going that public? Like, you know, was it like Psychic Detectives or Psychic Investigators? But the first one, how did you feel when someone comes to you and said, we want to do this show, we want to do this series? Please, what was that like at that point? When was that?
Well, that was, I don't know when it was. It was a long time ago, but it was the Geraldo show invited me. It was one of the first big, I had been on local shows, but it was the first national show. And I got invited on that show for the strangest reason. Bronson Pinchot, who is a comedian about a psychic detective. I had not seen the movie, and I did not know because they didn't tell me why they were inviting me. And I get on the show, and I'm sitting there, and on my right is Bronson Pinchot. Non-stop commentary throughout the show on Geraldo, and he's doing it with his mic on. And I'm like thinking, this is kind of a bad way to treat your host, but he didn't care. He was being funny. And I was having the worst time not laughing out loud because he said, he's really short, isn't he? And I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, and he had on high-heeled ostrich leather cowboy boots, which Bronson had some very interesting comments on. And sitting in the front row were two of the detectives that I'd worked with who had also been invited on board. I hadn't seen them in ages, and they were like partners to me from the Wilmington Police Department. And like, I'm on this show and I'm thinking, I'm going to get thrown off the show because I can't stop laughing. And he wouldn't shut up. And there was a lady to my left who was also psychic, a rather buxom lady who had sequins everywhere and looked like a Valkyrie. And I'm trying to stay sane in the middle of all this comedy. And then they showed a clip of the movie. And I lost it. I utterly lost it. And Geraldo says, why are you finding this so funny? I said, I wish I could do what Bronson did in the movie, because he had mentally walked a suspect and slammed him against the wall. And I said, oh God, I wish I could do that. And that just cracked the whole place up. And it was like, but Bronson he kept me so relaxed. I didn't even feel nervous, which was good. And my mom said, well, you did a good job. You smiled a lot. I said, yeah, try sitting next to a comedian like that and not smile. Oh, God. That was my
Nancy,
first.
I know that feeling with Chris because I have to stop giggling. I have to be professional. This man either will text me or do something to get me to laugh. Yes, you don't. Yeah, this afternoon.
Look at him playing innocent.
Yeah, look at that. Thank you, Nancy. This afternoon, he had me. I nearly had an asthma attack from laughing this afternoon. I said, if you don't stop, I'm going to die. So I know that type of person, Nancy. Chris is one of them. So, okay, what about psychic detectives or psychic investigators? That's a more serious. How did that come about?
Well, in each case, they actually were working with a police department and then found out that I had gotten them the information. And then they contacted me and wanted to do, like Unsolved Mysteries, we recreated some cases that I had solved. And Unsolved Mysteries did a spectacular job in their recreations. They were very credible, but it was kind of weird because I went on a trip with them just after my youngest son had a serious head injury. So Alex had to come along because he was having seizures. He couldn't be left alone. So he went with us, and it was really funny because for the first time I was on a show where an actress was hired to play me. And Alex became her coach. And he was telling her when she was getting me right and when she was getting me wrong. It is a very strange feeling to meet a complete stranger who is metamorphosing as best she can into being me. That was a really strange feeling, but it was a good segment. And then Unsolved Mysteries crew loads up. We're supposed to go to the airport to fly to Florida to work a case, and they forgot us. And Alex is standing there looking out the hotel window. Mom, they're leaving without us. They forgot us. I said, they wouldn't do that. Sure enough, he was right. And we went down to the desk, and he doesn't travel as much as I have traveled. So he's like a nervous wreck. We're done. We're going to be stuck here, and we won't be able to get on the plane. I said, I've got the tickets. Stop worrying about it, because I didn't want him to have a seizure. And I said, I'm going to go in the ladies' room, because Alex was so nervous. He was distracting me. And I just started focusing really hard that they would suddenly realize that they had forgotten us. And they're halfway to the airport from Wilmington, Delaware. We were on the way to the Philadelphia airport. They're halfway there, and they were talking about me and all the remarkable things that had been happening, including I was wrecking their batteries at an alarming rate. And then they realized they forgot us. So they changed stuff over to the big truck and came back with the van and picked us up. And Alex says to me, Mom, I want you to play the diva. I know you're not good at this, but I want you to pretend you're really mad at them. So I did. And Alex was like, yeah, my mom's really mad at you. You guys forgot her. And then I lost it and started laughing halfway through. I couldn't keep a straight face on. But we really did. We did
that ability, that gift. Sorry, it's a delay.
That's okay.
That gift, that ability you have to do that. I've got to ask you, Nancy, can you just warn my co-host, Chris, warn him, if he doesn't stop, you're going to do that with him. It has to be done. Okay, I wish I had that gift. But on that note, on a serious note on that, when I was watching years ago, because I'm not that old, the reruns 4 times of the shows, it was through watching a group of you go through this type of work. There was one of the shows, and I wasn't sure how that, I thought I'd ask you, I don't know who the psychic detective was, however, there was where someone was going to be convicted of something they didn't do. The psychic knew it, but the police and the prosecutor said, no, we've got him. But this psychic said she didn't know, what could I do about this? I knew he didn't do it. They had the wrong man. And then she did a group prayer. So have you ever experienced that where the police have got the wrong person and it's another?
Yes, I have experienced that. It does happen. Wow. It's quite rare, because I usually am working with really good detectives who don't usually make that mistake. But if you've got a real clever killer out there, they can set somebody up to take the fall for them. And I actually have worked a few cases that involved that, and what I ended up doing was giving the detectives enough proof that they realized that they had the wrong person. They don't want to put somebody innocent in jail. They want the real person. So when I give them strong evidence, then they listen. That's very rare, but it has happened.
Yeah, I just wonder, because I recorded it from one of the shows. Chris, do you have a question? Because I could ask all these questions to Nancy. I love it. Any questions?
I'm just really intrigued, because obviously I know you're a psychic medium naturally, Nancy, before you did any of this detective work. How long was it on your journey, if you like, before you started even getting an inkling about this? Before you met the gentleman that dragged you into it, forced you into it. How long before that was you on your journey or open to this aspect?
Well, I always had a lot of intuitive ability from the time I was a child.
Yeah.
My father's family was all fey with animals, and I was too. My mother was a professional artist, and her family was also quite intuitive. So I got it from both sides genetically. And I was the kind of kid that would just suddenly pop out with something and then it would happen. So my dad figured out early on that I had it. He didn't fully know what to make of it, but he was very supportive. And I didn't find out for a long time that he also had it, but didn't say anything.
Yeah.
I had a little conversation about that, but it was there, and I got warnings because I think that part of what's going on with psychic ability, it's our early warning system. It's what's supposed to help to keep us alive. And that's the way I used it for most of my life. Because I was in foreign countries where Americans were not liked, we went through being shot at and stuff like that. That's a normal part of my childhood. So I got warnings when I was in danger, and I always act on them because they are usually right. And my dad used to joke around was that inner voice was the only thing that could tell me what to do, and then I would listen to it because I wouldn't listen.
A bit like Chris again. A bit like Chris again, yeah.
I was not fully opened until I was 28. And I met Colonel Smith within probably 6 months of that opening. So I happened to be thrown into contact with him very early in my starting to work publicly. I had not been working long at all when he attended that seminar. And I about had a panic attack when the lady running the seminar said to me as I came in the door to do the seminar, "You do know we've invited police officers from all over the state, and there are a lot of them here." And I'm like, I wanted to turn around and go right back out the door. That was scary.
Wow. And 46 years later. Yeah. Wow. I mean, Nancy, I've got to ask. Oh, he's going to ask. Go on, you go first, Chris. Go again.
I was just going to ask what Karen asked you before, obviously for the viewers, but you don't just cover murders, do you, Nancy? You cover other aspects within your work.
I try to keep my schedule balanced. It's much harder to do that now that I'm better known because everybody wants me working on missing persons and murder cases, which is understandable. But I like working with people privately, helping them with the regular things of life. I mean, how do I get through this job and get a better one? And, these important things in life, I like working with that too, because it can get I don't want to reach the point where I think that all of humanity is bad. And when you only work police cases, you can get left feeling that we definitely are the most dangerous animal in the world. And when we are at our worst, it's awful. So, and you run into stuff you don't expect. I was talking with a person recently who I didn't know anything about and working with him, and he asked me a very unusual question about a certain time frame in his life, and I started to range it, and I started hearing screaming and explosions, and I had to back away, and I said, it would be really more polite of you if you warned me that you were in Vietnam during that time period and not walked me right into a battle with no warning. Yeah. And he apologized. He did not have any idea that that would happen in my mind. Yeah. But I was able to answer his question, and he later contacted me, apologized for putting me through that because he didn't know that would happen. But he also thanked me for giving him the answer because he was looking for one of his fellow soldiers, and I helped him find him. He didn't think he had survived, and he actually had survived. And he wanted to know where he was. So he was expecting me to tell him that he was on the other side, and he wasn't. He was still alive, and he didn't know that. So those two guys got reunited. That was pretty neat, but oh my gosh, that unexpected. I got off a plane in Frankfurt, Germany, and I'm walking across the tarmac, and all of a sudden there's machine gun fire, bombs. I'm down on the ground. And everybody thought I fell, and I pretended that I had fallen because I wasn't going to say, well, there's a war going on and I'm in the middle of it. But that, when my feet touched that ground, I did not know until afterwards how heavily Frankfurt had been bombed during World War II. But I was right in the middle of it, and I'm like, oh, I should have researched my history a little bit. But I just got on the plane and went, and ran right in. It's hard because I live in Western PA where the French and Indian War was fought. And sometimes I will walk into somebody's house and it's sitting on a site that was a log cabin where a massacre occurred. And, you know, you walk into this by accident and then you have to shut down quickly. So a lot of odd things happen when you're made this way.
I've never experienced anything as horrific as that. However, there was a time, it just brought it back. I was with a medium friend a good few years ago, and we were out somewhere, and we were walking through the fields, and we didn't quite realise where we were, you know, just going off. And next thing I know, she saw it too. Around me was an army, I mean old, guns, bayonets, and there were soldiers, and I was like, oh my, and I was like, what's happened? And I'm going to her, what's happened? She's going, can you see them? And that was my first experience of, the only way I could say it is like, I went in a different dimension or something. I don't know what happened.
You fall back in time. That's the way I describe it. You just fall back in time.
And I was in this war, and that was that. And then it was another time that come in, wasn't as strong as yours, for God's sake. No. I was in a Zoom room with my friends, and I think Chris could have been in, I don't know. And we were doing demonstration of mediumship. And I'm just sitting here, you know, as you do, blah, blah. And I'm in the Iraq war. I had a tank in the front room, and it was all going on. And then I had a platoon here. And I'm thinking, oh my. And so I cannot, what the depths that you went to and what you witnessed, you know, I can't even imagine yourself, Nancy. And there really is a pertinent question that I've always wanted to ask you, but I've never typed it in the messenger. Okay, I've got my opportunity. Here we go. For example, you know, when you're aware that they're looking for someone who's missing, and you know they're deceased. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Could be any scenario, and you know, like you experience what they experience. Okay. When that's completed and you've got the information you need, I've always wondered, do you then, it may seem like a naive question, but I'm curious, as a child, do you then cross them into the light or into another dimension, or do they just move? Does that make sense to you? That's the mechanics I don't understand. Sorry?
Well, when I come on something like that, I'm prepared for that because most of the missing persons cases I have worked on are murders, or deaths from some accidental deaths. In fact, if I'm working with the family on the phone and the police on the phone, I will warn the family member that I may describe things that may be very difficult for them to hear. and that if it gets too much for them, they can stop me and I will stop, because I don't want them to fully experience what their family member went through. But sometimes I get the rerun of the memory by using the date, the time, and the name of the person. And sometimes I ask them to send me maps where the person was last seen, where they worked, where they lived, and I psychometrize the maps. And I don't necessarily get the information being fed to me in a conversation from the dead person, but I get the imagery as if I'm using the crime scene photos. And then I can get a feeling of what's going on. Many times that is really hard for the family members because they're finding out what's happened for the first time. And as long as your child is missing, you're going to hope they're okay. That's just the nature of being a mom. It's like my oldest son, when he died last February, or a year ago February, he was alone. He lived alone, and he wasn't found for a few days. But I knew when he was found that at least I was lucky. I knew where he was. We don't know exactly what happened, but I knew where his remains were. And so many of the families I've worked with, they never know that. And that's just so painful to always wonder and never know. And Lois was a good example of that. Lois Duncan, the author, I worked on her daughter's situation, and you know, there were so many things she never got answers to, and she has passed on. She's back with her daughter now, but this is I have to be really careful, and I warn the families ahead of time. I may say something that you can't handle. Shut me up if that happens, and we'll deal with how you're going to go through this. I help them and try to sustain them while they deal with what's happening. But I think you have to really be sensitive to other people's pain. And not lose sight of that. I don't put finding someone and what happened to them over the emotional safety of their family. You know, that's just not fair to do it that way, in my view. I think ethically that's wrong.
And working from that answer, what advice or guidance would you give to anyone who's watching today, who will watch the show in the future, who's interested in becoming a psychic detective or have just sort of stepped into that area? What advice would you give them, if any?
Well, I've been giving the same advice for a long time. If you want to go into a challenging career, and this is any career, you need to learn how to do it and how you handle it before you launch yourself into a police department and say, I'm a psychic and I want to work murder cases. First of all, they're not going to believe you. They're going to think you're a nutcase. That's where it's going to start. And you can, through media, follow cases. So if you want to learn how to do it, practice using the cases as they're happening, because you would be able to range. And if you're not good enough to get information from watching the news reports, then you should not work in that field. The other thing that's good about practicing that way, you can find out if you can tolerate it. If it's going to be awful for you, there's plenty of ways you can help people other than murder cases. So if you're not emotionally strong enough for it, you want to find that out before you're standing there looking at a police officer who's thinking about taking you to the funny farm. I mean, that is not a good way to start. Don't start there.
Can I just quickly ask on that, Nancy? Has anyone, have you ever been accused as a suspect in a crime because you knew too much information? Because you were so accurate? Because
I almost got arrested.
Yeah, that's what I
I
was going to
almost
ask.
got arrested by the Secret Service because there was something called the Central Premonitions Registry. You've got one in England, and somebody started one in New York, and I found out about it. So I started sending them stuff. And one of the predictions I sent was about an attempt on President Gerald Ford's life. I described it, how it was going to happen, the room it was in, and that it was a man disguised as a woman and how he looked in the disguise. And I was working quite a bit with the Wilmington, Delaware police because I was living in northern Delaware and the Delaware State Police when that happened, thank goodness. These two Secret Service guys show up on my front porch. They show me their badges and I let them come in and sit down. And then I went to the phone and I dialed Colonel Smith and I said, I think I have a problem. The Secret Service wants to arrest me. After he fell out laughing, which I did not appreciate, he said, put him on the phone. I'll straighten this out. So I put the one Secret Service agent on the phone and he's arguing with Smitty. He really wanted to arrest me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Smitty, what did you get me into? And he came off the phone. He came in the room and he said, well, Colonel Smith says you're real. So I'm going to go with that for the moment. But if you're real, can you tell me who did this and how it happened? So I did. And he sat down and sat there for a while. And he said, what on earth made you send that prediction to the Central Premonitions Registry? And I said, well, they said the predictions would be confidential, which obviously they weren't. And I thought it might help protect the president. That's what I was hoping for, that they would tell you guys and you would be able to stop it. That's not what happened. Needless to say, I never sent another prediction to the Central Premonitions Registry, nor will I.
No. I mean, yeah, I can imagine.
There have been cases where I'm on a case and they're actually looking at the wrong suspect and I turn it around and give them evidence, direct evidence. See, that's one of the differences in how I work. I don't just tell the cops what happened. I show them evidence forensic evidence they can use to convict a person. It's not, the conviction is never based on my opinion or what I say. It's based on the evidence I help them find. And that's how it should be done. You know, you shouldn't go to court with a case where the only evidence is a statement of a psychic. That's just not the way to do it. That's not good.
Yeah. Absolutely amazing. What did I say, Chris? I mean, trailblazer. I do not know. I mean, I'm not that old, but in the whole of my life experience, I've never known a psychic detective like Nancy. I mean, it's just, as you heard today, and it's been wonderful. You're sharing this journey, and it's so inspiring. You know, everyone's going to go, oh, I want to be a psychic detective, and maybe they'll do it. That you've given the ground rules what to do. I do want to mention you have how many books now? One you're still writing. What books have been released?
I've written two. One is out of print. The second one, oh gosh, the title just went out of my mind. It's on my website, but the second one is in print and can be ordered through Amazon, and they have it in the tablet version, the e-version, as well as hardback.
Okay.
And I'm working on the third book now, which isn't out yet, and I'm not discussing the title because it's a neat title and somebody might borrow it and then I can't use it. But I'm working on it, and in this book, I'm going to talk in more detail about how I do what I do, because I did my research, and it's like nobody is saying how they do it, and there's no directions. It's like, just go out there and do it. So I thought I'm going to give some ideas to people that they can try for themselves, because they might as well do it right and not mess it up. And I've tried to set the bar high, because if I set the bar high, it's a lot harder for a fraud to duplicate what I've done. You really can't do, some of what I've done unless you are highly psychic. And if you do a halfway job, the frauds can imitate you. But if you do a really good job, they can't. So that's part of what
I'm definitely going to have. I'm going to have that book. I am going to have that book. I am. I mean, it's just that there isn't nothing out there. This is why when I asked you to come on the show, there's nothing to guide anyone. And there are many interested in. There are many gifted psychic mediums that could do this. They are there, but I don't know what to do. So I think,
directions on how I learned how to do it and how I do it, so that they can do it in a way that's less damaging to them. Because that's part of the problem from my point of view. The first time they dragged me to a crime scene, I had no idea how bad that was going to feel. I did not know. You asked me earlier, Chris, did I ever want to quit? Yes, I wanted to walk away that minute. And what stopped me was I wanted to show Carl Williams that I was real. That's what stopped me. Otherwise, I'd have gone and gotten back in the car and lied and said, I don't get anything, take me home. And he would have loved that. But I got all this stuff coming in, and he's like watching me. And I'm looking at him, and he says, why are you looking at me that way? And I said, because part of me wants to quit right now, and part of me wants to prove you wrong. And he said, go with the part that proves me wrong. So we did. But it's you need some idea of what to expect. And none of the books that I have read about other psychics tells you what to expect.
No. There's many what you call fraudulent psychic detectives, and they tell you, in fact, a load of BS, and it's BS. However, when this book is ready to be published and you reveal its title, would you let us know? Let me know.
Yeah.
And we will put that out there, obviously, on our page, on our channel. Do you have any idea when it's coming out? Anytime, months?
No idea. No idea. On both my previous books, the editors at the printers kind of got annoyed with me because I edit and I re-edit and I edit and I re-edit, and it drives them nuts. And I said, you don't get a good book out of me unless I do all this work. So I decided this time I wasn't going to let the editors know quite so soon. So they didn't bother me while I was redoing the whole book. And it's in progress. It's getting polished enough that I'm probably going to. I have a publisher in mind that I worked with before that I really liked, and I'm hoping I can get her to buy it for her company. But, time will tell.
Well, I want to.
Even after they buy it, it takes a year for it to get out there. So we're looking at least a year before it's going to be available.
That's fine. I'll be there waiting if I haven't murdered Chris in the process. And on that note, I was going to say, beware anybody if you think you can get away with a crime. If Nancy is around, there's no way on God's earth you could get away with anything. And if Nancy has inspired any of you today, and when Nancy's book comes out with how to do it, I would recommend, especially here in the UK, go and get the book, and you could make such a difference and give a lot of closure to a lot of families, and work as a team because we do have the friction between law enforcement and civilians. We do have that, but that's
everywhere.
Yeah, every country, but it's a good blending, and where we can help. And I said, if you've got the stomach to do it, you feel you can do it, follow Nancy's advice. If there's a crime in the paper, follow that. See what goes with that. Do it that way.
You're not going to go into international figure skating championships without a lot of practice. Why would you think you could go into this arena with no practice? That's never made sense. That's like do a lot of practice.
I do think I do think you need a good structure. The bar is high with you. You need guidelines to follow, and I think every profession needs that. And definitely psychic detection work needs it, and you're bringing that to the table. And on that note, Nancy, thank you.
Nancy, do you do a lot of remote viewing then as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just kind of send my mind out to find information and bring it back. I love archaeology too. I've done archaeology. It's kind of fun, stand on top of this mound of dirt and visualize what used to be there. I like that part.
Yeah. There's nothing Nancy doesn't do with her psychic gift.
I thought that's something that sometimes comes natural. And did you used to often go places without having to try to do that, if that makes sense? To know what you can do that.
I don't have to try it. It's there all the time. When I'm walking around in the world, I used to tell people I could turn it off, but that wasn't exactly the truth. But it made them more comfortable around me. It has gotten me. I raised 3 sons, and it got me banned from playing certain games where my ability gave me quite an edge. I wasn't allowed to play that game with them. They made me play games I didn't enjoy, like Monopoly, but the fun ones were Trivial Pursuit and stuff like that. There used to be a game called Fact and Five. Yeah.
I had the same with my children when they were younger.
Yeah, they kind of got
Mom.
You cheat. Yeah, exactly. That's what I said. Look, God made me. It's not cheating. God made me this way. I'm not cheating. I'm just doing what comes naturally.
It's always to think, Mum, we've got you a surprise. Don't even say anything. Don't, because it won't be a surprise. Go away. And they go, but so I was my children.
Those 3 guys worked so hard to surprise me at Christmas. And one year, the 2 younger ones had come up with an idea, because I used to be in ballet and I danced in the Nutcracker, and they knew that. And they came up with an idea for a Christmas present for me, getting a Nutcracker for me. And they were doing really well because I didn't know what was going on, but they kept asking me, do you know, Mom? And I would, without knowing why, sing the theme song from the Waltz of Flowers from the Nutcracker. So they thought I actually knew. When I opened the package, I was so excited. And they said, but you kept singing the song. And I said, I didn't know why I was doing that. I just answered their question by singing the song. And they thought I knew. But they knew when I opened the box how excited I was that I hadn't figured it out. I love that Nutcracker because that's the only time they ever successfully surprised me.
It's taken many years with my children, and it's only recently, and I don't know, I think I've learned to somehow switch it off because I want a blasted surprise. I was sick of knowing, and I think in my case, and I just say, don't tell me, don't, just go away, just go away. And they've done it a few times. But what they do, my children also have some certain gifts themselves, and they watch my face, because you can't really pretend to a psychic child that, well, you're lying, Mum. So you've just you can be the best actress in the world, but they have managed on a few occasions, and like you, I've come up with something, and they've thought I've known. I hadn't known. But I'd been doing something, I know one of them, I got to say this, is they, for one of my birthdays, they had a star named after me, a real one, up there somewhere in the solar system. It's got my name, it's got the tracking, the certificate, they paid for that. And I do remember before that, they were going, you're never going to guess. I was going, go away. And then, I don't know, I was into astronomy, I was doing the planets again. But I didn't know, because said, I don't want to know. I want a surprise.
Exactly. You want a surprise, yeah. I know the
It was
feeling well.
unfair. So I think I've mastered that one, and so I do resonate with you on that one. It's just, it's been a fabulous. Has it gone too quick, Chris? It's gone too quick.
I could carry on. What was your most amazing moment within your career and all them sort of things? But the hour flies by, doesn't it?
You are my trailblazer.
I'm going to ask you anyway, Nancy, what was your most amazing moment within your psychic detective career?
Well, I think one of the most amazing moments was when I literally saved my youngest son's life. He had something growing in his neck, and the doctors were ignoring it, and I was really angry that they were ignoring it because I was quite sure it was cancer. And I kept bringing him back and insisting that they do more testing. And finally, they got a pediatric specialist, and he came in and took one look at it and looked at me, and he said, "It's a good thing that you're a very stubborn mother and you have kept coming in, because I think your son has Hodgkin's disease." He had asked him all kinds of questions. And then he went out in the hall and shut the door, and Alex and I are sitting in the examining room, and he blew up at the doctors that had misdiagnosed the situation. Told them off like our ears were blistering because we were listening to it, but it tickled Alex because we were finally going to get a biopsy done. And when the biopsy came back, it was Hodgkin's in such an early stage that they saw a cell change they'd never seen before. And they had to send it to one of the top specialists in the US to find out what they were looking at. And he said, this is a cell change that is the earliest cell change we've seen that leads to Hodgkin's. So it went into research history, but he got treated for cancer. And if we had not done that, it would have gone throughout his body. He might not have survived. To me, that was one of the most spectacular hits. And some of the other ones, I've actually found missing children alive. Those are the best days. Those are awesome. That makes the crap worth it.
Yes, it must do. It must do.
And one of the ones I found was a 9-month-old baby, and I'm trying to arrange a baby's thought pattern, and all I can do is see what he's looking at. He's so little, and he's in a car seat. There's limited view, but all of a sudden I called the FBI agent I was working with, and I said, that baby is with the father's sister. We knew the father had been the one that had taken him. And he's in a store in this part of Pittsburgh. Get there fast and you'll get the baby. And they did. They went and got the baby. And that lady had been claiming she knew nothing about where he was, and here she was, not notifying. So she got arrested and the baby got rescued. That was really cool. I liked that one.
Amazing.
There you go, you see.
Yeah, awesome.
She's amazing, isn't she, Chris? Amazing. And was my inspiration many years ago, as I said. And we're coming to the end of the show. What can I say but humbly thank you. And Nancy, when your book is ready, okay, I'm brown nosing here. Let me know. And we would love it would you come back on the show then, and then you can reveal, talk about your book, we'll promote your book, come back on the show, and then we can you can reveal some more detail.
Some more
if you're happy to do that. Would you say, Chris?
Juicy stuff is good. Well, thank you both for having me on the show. It's been delightful. It's kind of, I like sitting in my living room doing a show. It's more relaxing.
we're in our homes. We're having a conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
And
exactly.
That's what it's about. So we're going to send you back to the naughty room. Okay, you like the naughty
okay.
room. We'll send you back to the naughty room. We have your link online and everything. And we'll speak with you in a few seconds, Nancy. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for inviting me. It's been delightful.
It's been wonderful. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Oh, Chris. Wow. Wow. Nothing more to say than wow. More than impressive. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a real psychic detective. A real. And I do recommend you look for her books. We've got her links up. In America, as Nancy said, YouTube have the shows on. I
said, you'll have to be careful, Gloria. She'll know all your secrets.
She knows all my secrets, but she'd never reveal them because I'm her biggest fan in the United Kingdom or in the whole world. So, and you did best be careful, Chris Shearer, because you cause me any more problems. I'll have her go into her bathroom and focus her attention. Okay,
but I'm sure Nancy's got a favourite chocolate I can send to her, or favourite flower or something
too
like
late,
that.
No, too late. No, not. Who went to university to learn criminology? I did. You go away. But you know what? It's been a learning. It's been humbling, hasn't it?
Yeah,
and
it's amazing.
And Nancy will return on the show when her new book comes out, and we can go through that and share that with everyone. So thank you to our audience. Without you, there wouldn't be a show. We've had a double today. We've had 11 o'clock and we've had a tea time one. We hope you enjoyed your show. Look, I'm lost for words now. It's a long day. Enjoyed the show. We will see you next week. And hopefully we get all the technical stuff sorted out again. And we have the wonderful Mary Rodwell from ACERN is coming on, an international speaker. So we look forward to that next week. Until then, Christopher.
It is good night from her.
And it's good night from him. Good night, everybody. See you next Saturday. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Oh.